The carnivore diet. Eat meat, feel better. But is it that simple? Well, now there are thousands of anecdotes of people finally feeling better after years of pain using this animal-based way of eating. There are still many of those who struggle. That's because all of our bodies are very different. What's right for me probably isn't gonna be right for you. So today I'm welcoming board-certified, nationally accredited physician assistant, Austin Cavelli. God, I hope I said that right. Known to the online world as Quality Carnivore, her mission is to help people optimize their health by burning fat for fuel and reducing years of underlying inflammation. Doing all of this while also destroying the dogma surrounding all of these crazy diets to figure out what is best for you. After all, there is no one size fits all, not even in carnivore. So where can you start? What is gonna be right for you? How do you troubleshoot this dang thing? Let's ask her. And hey, if you're enjoying the podcast, make sure to hit the subscribe button and notification bell so that you don't miss any of the amazing guests that we have coming up on the show. And with that, let's just jump right into it. I'm so excited because we have on Austin. Not even going to try to pronounce your last name. I messed it up in the intro 3 times. Forgive me. You may know her on Instagram as Quality Carnivore. She is a certified and accredited physician assistant, so she knows her stuff. There's no BS with her, and that's really what I admire, what you've been doing in this wellness community. So thanks for sitting down and having a conversation with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here, and I'm more than happy to spread the word and shed light on this way of eating for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I got to ask, I got to be a little blunt and upfront, I got to ask because people are going to wonder with the whole carnivore thing. What did plants do to you in your former life to make you hate them so much?
Honestly, plants, I was never the girl who was like, oh, I should eat salad. I hated salad. Even if, that was considered what was healthy, I absolutely never was craving a salad. Like, I can't remember one time in my life. Plants and I just don't get along, especially, and I found surprisingly more and more so even in the keto space, because I kind of transitioned your typical transition from like paleo, whole foods paleo to keto and then into carnivore. And keto, you could eat all things cauliflower, all things Brussels sprouts with bacon. All of those are highly emphasized and what's considered allowed. And oh my goodness, those did me the worst. So yeah, never a fan of vegetables. The digestive issues that I got from it, really, really bad gas, distension. Yeah, I dealt with chronic constipation, so those just made it worse. Everything was fiber, and nope, me and plants, we're just not friends.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fascinating looking back now because I think you learn a lot in retrospect, looking at the ways you used to eat and then the way you felt and the way you thought that was normal. And then you do something different and you're like, wow, I don't have any of the bloating or the weird stool patterns or anything. And you're kind of like, so this is what it's supposed to be like.
Yes, I love finding that, like helping others find that. I call it, your new baseline, because unless you venture outside of that, change requires change. Unless you see that change, you just don't know any different.
So I think a good place to start, and why I really like having you on, is because you are an accredited physician's assistant. You have this baseline knowledge of how conventional medicine works. You've worked in that field, and now you've kind of seen the ins and outs of both sides. So you have this wider perspective that I think a lot of people don't have, and that's very valuable. So as a nurse practitioner, or as a physician assistant, my bad, as a physician assistant, what were your thoughts about carnivore when you kind of first heard of that? And maybe we can kind of go into your story, because that's probably where it is. But coming from that conventional standpoint where you would totally think that this is nothing anyone should be doing, what kind of got you into it, and how did it all start for you?
Yeah. So again, it was kind of this, going from standard American diet, processed things, which I mean, we definitely had my fair share growing up, but we very rarely kind of went out to fast food places. So Italian family, by all means, we did every carb there is, but yeah, it was focusing more on whole foods and not eating out of a box, out of a eating processed things. So that was kind of start, and that makes sense. Let's eat things that are going to go bad more quickly because they don't have a million chemicals, preservatives in it. So from a medical standpoint, it was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But of course, we're told, all our vitamins and minerals, you got to have the plants. So I struggled with that actually personally for a couple of years, having going into particularly paleo to keto. It seemed that there was much less as far as the variety of the different plants, particularly in me with the digestive issues. Like I said, with the cruciferous vegetables, those were a no-go just because of how I felt. But even with the restriction in when you're counting your carbs, it takes away a couple of a number of options as far as what are considered more high carb vegetables and fruits. So it was like, okay, well, yeah, no, keto is a fat fueled state. I was doing my research in the sense of what is the medicine behind this, and biochemically, it made sense as far as burning your fat for fuel. But I kind of struggled with, well, I don't know. We've always been told that we need fruits and vegetables. And here I am. I'm just really doing avocados or doing some lettuces. Is this okay long term? And it really wasn't until I cut everything as far as plant sources out that, again, it was kind of that, what we talked about, that new baseline where you're like, no, I feel incredible. So I do encourage clients, like, give it a go. You really, when clients work with me, I even say, I was like, forget everything you've ever known, and just trust me. Tell me everything as far as symptoms and what you're feeling. I'll be able to know whether or not, something is really wrong. But just trust that, don't allow the mindset to derail you as far as this way of eating.
Yeah.
So, and there's, of course, all the myths around carnivore as far as, well, don't we need fiber? And what about our kidneys? And, our cholesterol. But having come from a keto space, the cholesterol thing was less of an issue. And more is being published about that now, just ketogenic state. So there's a lot to debunk as far as the carnivore diet. But I'm very, very humbled by my own experience and being able to promote it to other people, having gone through it. I always tell people, you could have someone who read a book. That doctor read a book about that disease, but unless you've had experience in it yourself, I would much rather the person work with me who has experience than the person who read a book one time 10 years ago.
Experience is where you basically learn everything. Everything worthwhile comes from experience. I mean, you can read all the books in the world. I've read so many books on carnivore and just different diets.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the craze with all these new coaches and consultants, is that they've been through these very individual experiences, and so they're able to really reach out and help others.
Yeah. So this is kind of a good place to start with kind of the dogma that surrounds just diets in general. And I was going to ask you, I was curious because there's so much wrong just in the standard American diet. The new dietary guidelines came out for 2020, every 5 years. They just came out a little while ago. I mean, I was disheartened by what was in there, promoting a lot of seed oils and et cetera, but I also wasn't surprised because I'm kind of just like, well, this is how it is.
Yeah.
But these are, quote, our nutrition professionals. And so I wanted to ask you, as someone that was in that kind of area of conventional medicine, what did Western medicine get right about diet, and what has it gotten so wrong? Assuming they've gotten anything right. I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt.
That would be the thing. It's much easier to say what they got wrong, just because it's an endless list. So maybe it is easier to look, what did they get right? Well, I mean, I think we're transitioning to more of the eating more whole foods. as compared to processed foods. But I say that, and I must admit, when I see marketing as far as like even products that they're promoting, this plant-based meat and
Mhm.
the vegan products, those are the things that are going to continue to make money because they are shelf stable. So while I want to believe that we're moving more toward whole foods, I see the companies that are still standing behind, well, what can we sell to put money in our pockets? Because the fresh crops, those aren't going to last very long. So I think that would maybe be the only thing that I've noticed as far as a transition over these past 10 years, is a little bit more pull for whole foods. But no, the seed oils, the vegetable oils, the grains, the sugar, they're all still there. And those are, if you are going to make any changes in your diet, those are the top three. You have to go. So I cannot say that I trust nutrition. And yes, like just like you said, those new guidelines came out, and here we were all really, really hopeful, and it was like disappointment again. So I think the bigger picture is money in their pockets, and that's just not going to go away. Uh,
Unfortunately, that's just, the more I've worked even in social media, that's just the way everything goes back to money.
right. I mean, plant-based meat. I just like, in what world is that something that we need? I
And
just I mean, and here I was saying, maybe we are going toward more whole foods. No, we're now manufacturing things that are already whole food. Like, why? It's going out of our way to make something that shouldn't exist to begin with. So it's very confusing. And what is it ultimately achieving? It's money in their pockets. So we have
one
to keep that in mind.
One thing I found really interesting is I was making just a little reel for Instagram the other day, and I was looking at some of the protein powders that I've had that I haven't really used in like a year or two, but I just still had the boxes. And I was like,
Mhm.
I've never really looked at what was in these protein powders, and because they're just promoted as like the thing to do if you're like trying to build mass or whatever. You're using your
Yeah,
gold standard whey protein from Optimum Nutrition, or maybe you are trying to go plant-based, and so you're going to a company like Arbonne that's really big, and they're selling you their vegan-based products. And if you
right.
look at both of them, they both have a bunch of crap in them. They
Yes.
both, and actually the funny commonality between both of them, whether or not you're an advocate for animal-based or you're someone that is more vegetarian or vegan, both of them contain something neither of you should consume, and that is seed oils. They're in both
Yeah.
of them. They both have sunflower oil. And I was like, I've had this every day for
Yep.
like years of my life, and I had no idea what I was doing to my
Yeah, and
body.
those are the things that stay in your cells for years and years and years. The half-life is like 600 and something years. So even that, and people say, "Oh, well, it's not a big deal," because you don't feel the immediate effects of it.
Mhm.
That's another just a problem with society and in the sense of health, is that if you aren't having that heart attack today, preventative medicine is not the focus in the medical field whatsoever.
Exactly.
So you really do have to kind of be an advocate for yourself in that, like, what is this doing to my body long term? And really, focus on that. Think about those products. So with protein powders, from the only argument really that you could make where a lot of people turn to it is that they're not eating enough protein. So the convenience factor is a big
Yeah.
one. But you're right. Anything that is sitting on a shelf, it's going to have chemicals in it to keep it safe to stay on that shelf for years and years and years. And we can all kind of relate to that. What was the it was in the news, or it was published in an article about the Twinkie, how many
Um,
years it stayed, and you could
it's
eat it, and it tasted fine because of
mhm.
all the chemicals that were in it. So when I think of shelf stable or something that's processed, that isn't really going to go bad, there's a reason for it. It is stabilized with chemicals. And those chemicals are what you're putting in your body, what are making up your cells, which in the long term can lead to that that disease that you may not feel it today, but long term, that is a big problem.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. It's one of my favorite things to do. And look, we all know what you put into your body matters. But did you also know that where your food comes from is even more important? You see, frankly, today's food quality just isn't what it used to be, especially the meat. Ew. That's why I personally always look for regenerative distributors like Billy Doe Meats. Their products come directly from pasture-raised farms with top-notch standards of care and husbandry. They believe that not only do we all have a responsibility to our bodies, but also the animals, the water, and the land that surrounds all of us. And that's why I love them so much. I personally have a reoccurring subscription with them to get different cuts of meat every couple weeks, such as lamb shank, goat ribs. Honestly, my mouth's watering just talking about it. And by using code R2R, you can save 10% on any of your purchases from Billy Doe Meats. Hopefully, by paying attention to where our food comes from, together we can create an ecosystem where everyone and everything can thrive. When we think about diet, we really should just go back to the basics of what we were made to eat. And I mentioned those tribes to him. And he basically told me how there's no way that what they're doing is better because modern science is definitely going to trump basically any of the way our ancestors ate. He didn't agree with the idea of eating ancestrally at all because our ancestors didn't live that long. That was his whole thesis of the argument. And I'll let you kind of jump in on that and kind of give your side.
Well, I think there's definitely environmental factors that are kind of now without, they're outside of our control. As far as food, yes, food definitely has changed over the years. You can look at a picture of, a banana years and years ago, and then what it looks like today and how it's evolved. And again, these were kind of our doings as far as the manipulation of these products, and then also them evolving over time. I mean, plants particularly have these anti-nutrients in order to protect themselves, just like an animal would, survival of the fittest. So there's definitely just natural evolution that occurs. As far as going back to eating like our ancestors, though, I think eating more whole foods, even if they are somewhat different, is a much better approach than eating something that is made in a factory just because it lasts longer. So, these grains and these sugars, these things were originally kind of brought to us in the sense of keeping us alive or helping us keep weight on. But there is no shortage of food in this country. So, choosing your best sources that we can get our hands on, for sure, I would promote that in everyone. And it doesn't, necessarily have to be meat, even if it is plants. But going for the most the best source that you can find that is free of chemicals, including glyphosate, like the organic option. Spending your money there, I think that's very, very important. It doesn't necessarily have to be carnivore, but quality of your food is so important. The other thing to that is, our environment, like I said, is so different than our ancestors. There's so much stress. And then even with agriculture, are these farms that are being kind of emphasized because they're regenerative farms. That used to be the norm, and now that's far and few between, unfortunately. So our soil is depleted of certain nutrients now, and even the amount of traffic and roadways near these farms. I mean, there's some things that are just outside of our control. So yes, it won't exactly be like our ancestors. There's no way, it's impossible to go completely that way. But doing the best you can, it's better to, make small changes or to support things locally and do, everything that you can. You're in that favor, as opposed to just throwing in the towel and saying, well, no, it'll never be like our ancestors. What are you achieving then?
Yeah, I mean, you have to get as close as you can. That's why I'm also an advocate for, it goes beyond diet. It's like you got to get out into nature. You got to get sun, something that I clearly do not get enough of. And
it's a lifestyle, for sure.
It's a whole lifestyle. And that's what I think people get lost when they hear carnivore diet when I brought it up to people. And it's so funny because it's like, yeah, sure, eat all this sugary crap, eat your Ben and Jerry's. But yeah, don't eat meat, which is like almost the purest form of food you could probably get,
Yes.
like, at all. So I kind of want to ask you, like, as you're working with clients now, and coming from this more kind of holistic side of treating people with underlying inflammation,
Yeah.
why does animal-based eating work so well?
Yeah. So it comes down to the inflammation. It is a ketogenic state, whether you'll go in and out of it naturally, but the focus is bringing down the inflammation as much as possible. And in order to do that, believe it or not, yes, plants can contribute to that based on, again, these anti-nutrients, these chemicals that they're producing to protect themselves. So when you really dial it down, we use it as an elimination approach. You are reducing inflammation greatly. And that is really the basis of chronic disease, is inflammation. So autoimmune conditions, your even cardiac risks, mental health. There's so much anecdotal evidence on a spectrum of disorders, conditions, syndromes, diseases, whatever you want to call them. They are states of inflammation. The ones that are most prominent here in the US are really a result of insulin resistance, which is due to the seed oils, the grains, the sugar, and all three of those things contributing to inflammation. So that is why, and many vegans, many plant-based people will argue, well, that inflammation is brought down on that same diet. And that's true to some degree, as far as taking out the seed oils, the vegetable oils, the grains, and the sugar. So you will initially feel that kind of, wow, this is a new normal. But long term, as far as getting the most nutrients, in focusing on nutrient dense foods, the amount of food, for example, like iron, many people think spinach. The amount of iron that you're getting in the piece of meat versus how many cups of spinach you would need to eat to get that equivalent, it's ridiculous. So again, the most nutrient dense foods is what we're focusing on to not only make sure that you're getting enough nutrients, but also that you're minimizing inflammation. So for that reason, carnivore is incredible.
One of the things that I really like, speaking about different nutrients and bioavailability, is we had Judy Cho on the show like a couple months ago, but I love the infographics she uses because she's put side by side. And I think you've done some infographics as well that are pretty good. But you can just look at like spinach or asparagus, which both have a lot of iron in them, and you put them next to ribeye, steak, liver, any of those things, and there's a distinct difference in not only the amount you'd have to eat, but you also have to then convert the plant iron into a bioavailable version of iron that you can use. And we all do that at different rates. So a little example for myself, having done some like genetic work on myself, because I'm just a nerd with all this crap, beta carotene turns into vitamin A. So they'll say, oh, carrots and sweet potatoes, you're getting like 1,000% of your vitamin A. Looking at chronometer, I'm like, dang, I'm going to go toxic on this stuff.
Right.
But as you know, beta carotene has to be converted. A lot of humans, not so great at that. I myself, according to my genome, depending on how it's working, how it's methylating, all that stuff that you can get really deep into, it only converts usually for me 50% of that or less.
Yes,
to
I'm
actual
genetically.
Yeah. And a lot of people are like that. And it's the same with omega fats. You can get them from flax or walnuts or chia seeds. And I'm really bad at doing that. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, no, that is a very good point. And a lot of people do not think about that. So not only first are you introducing the nutrient into your body, and then is your body able to utilize it? And for that, genetics plays a role. Also, what is the status of your body, of your internal organ systems? Is your gut completely out of whack? Because you could throw as much beef liver as you want at it, and if it's not absorbing the nutrients, there's definitely, you're more likely to get something from beef liver as opposed to something else. So
Mm.
not a bad thing, but are you really utilizing all the nutrients that you're introducing? And this will vary from person to person. But again, the biggest proponent of it is, are you inflamed? If you are not in a state where your body feels safe to react and to absorb those things, to utilize them, you doesn't matter what you put in your body. And again, that's not a reason to throw in the towel, but you want to fix those things to make sure that you really are utilizing everything that you're putting in.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And that's kind of brings me to just a little bit of the plant toxin discussion, because there are these different things. We got oxalates, lectins, I want to say phytates. There's a lot of weird stuff.
Yeah.
So I kind of will hand it over to you and kind of talk about what are the major ones you see that maybe some clients will come to you and be like, oh yeah, I've been eating spinach every day, or kale or chard and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And because I heard it was good. And then you're like, well, maybe not so much.
Right. And I will admit, I was one of those people. I did keto, like I said, I was really dwindling it down as far as vegetables at that point for digestion.
Mm.
And spinach is pretty benign in the sense of digestion, as it didn't cause gas, that type of stuff. But the oxalates that I got, I ended up getting signs of a kidney stone. So it definitely played a toll on me, and I looked into it further, and that was kind of what I went down the rabbit hole of anti-nutrients. So as far as, and it can be confusing for people because, you could have a plant that is high in oxalates, but low in lectins. So it's like, well, what's the lesser of two evils? Everyone's looking for, well, what's the best, or which one should I choose? And it really comes down to the bioindividual. But I think that being said, there are across the board some that we should just all eliminate. Lectins are probably the most harmful in the sense of the gut, and it's your beans, the legumes, and your grains. So again, whenever I say, hey, let's make a change to the diet, seed and vegetable oils, grains, and sugar. As far as the other big ones, it's oxalate, the accumulation of oxalates over time. I can't tell you how many clients I work with who even going low carb, that's really when we start to see the symptoms of this oxalate dumping. And they are told by their doctor that they have gout. And in fact, they've been low carb for the past, whether it's 3 months or 6 months, and all of a sudden they're getting this joint pain. So I'm not convinced that it's necessarily gout. I think, and of course, if they're carnivore, the doctor is blaming the meat.
Yeah.
And I would have to disagree. I think that it is much more oxalate dumping than it is actual gout. So there are tactics in order to kind of get rid of these things. But oxalates, lectins, phytic acid is really present in nuts. So who is doing, sprouted nuts raw, soaking them? You can get rid of that to some degree, but when people eliminate them, I think they feel even better. It really can. All of these things contribute to leaky gut.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big one. And man, I've actually interviewed a gut microbiologist. So their job was studying the gut. Did not believe leaky gut was a thing. Didn't believe it was an overhyped pseudoscience way to peddle supplements condition. And I think what they're going to find is, man, she was wrong.
Yeah, I would have to disagree with that big time.
Unfortunately, I think in our modern paradigm of the way we eat every day, I see it in my parents, I see it in my friends. My business partner just had a kidney stone, was in the hospital for a day. And, I'm not surprised. That's unfortunately. But so you did mention there are some strategies people can do to kind of get these things out of our bodies. Particularly oxalates are a big problem, and lectins, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some just baseline strategies beyond just taking them out. That's number one for sure.
Elimination is number one for sure. Other things, particularly with the oxalates, what you want to do is prevent the accumulation of them in your kidneys. And Sally Norton is a great resource for oxalate and oxalate dumping, all things oxalate. So definitely check her website out. But as far as some people will add lemon water to their water to drink that. Other people, say cranberry, which can be helpful for filtration of your kidneys, but won't break up the oxalate, the crystals as far as the accumulation. So it can go. We don't have enough research on that,
right.
But different in the sense of what it actually does. Breaking it down is more the lemon, the citric acid. Other things, really, as far as any toxin, is sweating. I am a huge proponent for sauna. Sauna therapy is great, whether it is, for balancing minerals, metals, getting metals out of your system. I absolutely love the sauna personally, but yeah, I would definitely recommend, of course, staying hydrated, making sure that you're getting enough salt every day. But these new shifts, these fluid balances are so important for detox of anything. And we're obviously exposed not only to these chemicals in our food, but also, like I said, environmental chemicals. So I think it's really, really important. What are you using, as far as your cookware? And you can take this down to so many different levels. But sweating really is important to detox.
No, I'm a huge fan of sauna. I've actually dealt with personally in my past daily packaged tuna consumption for 4 years. I ate tuna every day. I was eating probably about 5 ounces of tuna a day, which is I think the weekly allotment for what you're supposed to have for chunk like tuna. So I actually had
mercury is a concern for tuna for sure.
Yeah, I actually developed some nervous system problems about 1.5 years ago, and I told my doctors about the mercury thing and how much tuna I was eating, and they just totally brushed it off as nothing. Took me 3 months to get my mercury blood levels tested. And by then, it's obviously not going to be as high. But what I found astounding was that in the reference range of what they considered normal for mercury, which I thought was crazy that they had a range for normal, I was still in the higher half of the reference range 3 months after cutting out all fish.
Oh, wow.
It was insane. So I've been saunaing it up. So it's just sweating, exercise, anything that makes you sweat, Epsom salt baths, and just get hot. Sweating is definitely something I recommend to people all the time. And it just gives you also kind of like when you do certain lengths of fasting, you kind of get a mental clarity after you've really sweated it out in a sauna, I've found.
Yeah.
I find that
definitely noticed that as well. Similar, like the ketosis mental clarity is what I would compare it to for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's it is. I think it's really important. We're finding more and more that just being comfortable, so whether it's heart rate variability or temperature, those things, you should be stressing your body to some degree on the extremes in order to make it so that you are able to adapt, that you are you have that ability as far as your body. What's the word I'm looking for?
Hormesis? Or resilience?
Resilience. Yes, that is it. So you are more resilient in extremes and when things aren't the norm. I make a joke because here I am in San Diego now, and it is 75 and sunny pretty much year round. When there is even a 5-degree change in temperature, I am very sensitive to it. And it's like, oh man, I used to live in New York where it was 20 degrees or less. I was walking outside and I was a champ. I was fine. So I think having that variability, that resilience between extremes is important. And sauna definitely provides that in the sense of heat as well as detoxification purposes.
It is funny. I lived in Los Angeles for a few years, and when it would drop down into like the 60s in winter, I would be like wearing my huge coat. And I'm
Yeah.
from Wisconsin originally. I'm wearing this big puffy coat, and I'm freezing my butt off. And it's
Yep.
because, yeah, you get this comfortability. So
Yep.
and you don't have to like pay for a crazy sauna. Like usually I mean, as gyms open up, a lot of gyms have saunas.
Yeah.
If you
I know
go
I
to a
missed
gym.
mine with COVID. It was closed, and I'm like waiting for it to open up. I hope they do even just a sign up sheet, like whatever. I don't,
Mhm.
but it's the close quarters than anything, I guess.
And the crazy thing is, after you stop for a while, I'll notice this when I just go on little vacation trips for a week or so. I notice how crappy I feel without doing some of that stuff.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
really
especially
becomes,
sleep.
yeah.
Sleep is really profound with sauna therapy and cold therapy. I've noticed definitely so much better with them. So yeah, I mean, even things as far as going for a walk. I mean,
Mhm.
if you're used to walking every single day, and then things shut down, and they were closing trails out here. Even just movement, a walk that seems so simple, but I was definitely noticing changes in sleep and overall how I was feeling, energy levels. So I think that really is the shortcoming of Western medicine on this topic is there isn't a focus on lifestyle. People aren't asked, what do you do day to day? What are you incorporating in your life other than just the basic functions of, yeah, you eat but even that, they don't even ask about diet. So lifestyle is so important. What you do every day, what you're consistent with every day is the reason for these the manifestation of chronic disease. So if you are putting seed oils and vegetable oils in your body every day, yes, that is something that is you are going to see down the line, not necessarily today, but finding what the best, those the better options are for each one of those aspects, for improving your sleep, for improving your diet, for improving movement. All of those things consistently on a day-to-day basis add up. So that should be the focus, not hey, let's throw a medication at you because your blood sugar today was super high. No, let's prevent your blood sugar from getting high in the first place. And what do we need to focus on to do that?
All of this stuff. I mean, it is sad. I mean, we've said it a few times, but we've become a medical system of reactive medicine and not
Yes.
preventative medicine. And that's the whole problem, because diabetes usually is the end stage of years of
Right.
bad behavior on your body. Your insulin's probably been high for a long time. You have all these other problems that have been manifesting, and they're even finding. I've had people like Amy Berger come on, and
Oh, she's great.
even some other neurologists come on and talk about Alzheimer's disease and how you can really see the beginnings of those neurodegenerative problems 20, 30 years before they manifest as a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah, it's sad. I mean, both I had two grandparents who were in nursing facilities, and it was so frustrating to see. Of course, they're approaching the end of their life, and everyone in my family is like, "Well, what can we do?" And it at that point, it's like this was years and years and years. They're very insulin resistant. Was trying everything I could, even just to get them ketones,
Mm,
exogenous ketones, just to have more clarity of a good conversation that day, getting them all of the products that were low sugar, and not because of course they're just given starches day in and day out in those
mm,
facilities. It's such poor quality. Making sure, did they get up today, did they walk? Well, yeah, I guess, I don't know, maybe PT was in there. It's like, no, it's important. You don't want them sitting in their bed
yep.
with their lungs filling up. That's how things manifest. Then it's diabetes quickly becomes, pneumonia, because they just weren't moving. So
Yep.
it's all these little things that are so important. But like you said, it's years and years that these things develop. So we really do have to focus on preventative medicine. It's so important.
So I think something that would be kind of good to go back to is this idea of the inflammation and the gut and its
Mm.
connection to inflammation, because that's really, like you mentioned earlier on, the root of all these disease processes is inflammation.
Yes.
So how can we use this? I keep calling it animal-based eating, but I just feel like it sounds more scientific than just saying carnivore all the time. But how can we use carnivore to help heal our guts from all these years of abuse?
Yeah.
Because it starts so young. It's just like
It
little kids. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. I mean, it's even people that I work with who are parents, and that are changing their dietary habits. It's much harder to change it when you have kids around, and for convenience purposes, or because they want one thing 1 minute and then something else the next. It's much easier to give them a shelf stable product that you have in your pantry.
Yep.
So it definitely takes an adjustment there. And support is very important. But as far as inflammation, again, eliminating these toxic substances first and foremost, the seed oils, the vegetable oils, the grains, the sugar, and just by doing that alone, you're cutting down on inflammation. You're allowing the gut to heal without these things present. That being said, this is going to take a while. Think of it. I always like to remind clients that you have done, whether it's 30 years, 40 years, 60 years of damage. You are expecting that to turn around, and whether it's your goal is weight loss or just to be overall healthy, you're expecting that in, you hear the 6-week or the 3-month numbers thrown out, and it's like years and years and years, like it's going to take time. So the gut, especially, you can see some changes for sure within a shorter time frame, like 3 months. But it's going to take time. So we have to be very, very patient. Things like leaky gut, first and foremost. And you'll notice symptoms that you may have had before, or that may be new. Particularly on carnivore, people will say, oh, well, I'm having all this diarrhea, or I'm having all this constipation. Those are actually good signs. These are signs of healing. These are signs of change. So yeah, it's elimination first and foremost as far as healing on the inside. And you'll notice as you heal your gut, that gut mind, that gut brain connection, mentally, that will also heal. So people notice changes in their mood, changes, oh, I'm not as irritable, I'm not as on edge, I'm not as hangry. These things are connected. We know very well that the gut and the brain are connected, and that the neurotransmitters in dealing with leaky gut, or gut healing, serotonin, more than a little over 80% is in your gut. So it would make sense that this connection and these changes will occur in your mental health as well, which I think are honestly the most profound. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, no. So speaking of mental health, actually, one thing that I found really interesting is so many people today have hormone imbalances, including myself. I was like shocked to learn like my thyroid's messed up. My male sex hormones are like they don't exist. I've struggled with mental health problems in the past. I was on Lexapro for years, the serotonin uptake inhibitors, and I've always wondered, like, oh, well, we just assume there's like, oh, that's just me, that's just my body. But if that's the case, how the hell did humans make it this far if we're having all these problems? It just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So
No.
yeah, there has to be something more. So the one thing I kind of wanted to ask you is, when we talk about hormones, everyone says, oh, you need carbs for hormones.
Yeah.
And so I kind of wanted you to dispel that dogma right there.
Yes, no, that is not true. And there is a lot of talk just in, especially with females, even as far as, well, maybe I'm going through menopause. I need some carbs at night. You can play around with carbs strategically as far as sometimes sleep, but overall, as far as carbs being essential for your hormones, no. The backbone of your hormones is fat. You need saturated fat, just like you need cholesterol for your brain, for this prevention of Alzheimer's disease that we're seeing more and more. Very similarly, same type of concept. You need fat for your hormones to function properly. There is a reason that, if you go and you lose a lot of weight, or you are not getting enough saturated fats, many vegans, I've heard many stories that they lose their period. Your body does not, when you lose your period, your body is basically telling you, I do not feel safe for you to carry another human being. So yeah, we're not going to make it so that you are reproductively functioning right now. So yes, it is not essential that you need carbohydrates for hormone function. You need more fat. Animal fats are your go-to for sure. You want to stay away from the bad oils, of course, and aim for the animal fats. And I've seen many people go carnivore and their period has returned. But similar to how the gut, it takes time. It also takes time for you to heal your hormones and for those levels to there's always a feedback mechanism with hormones, your hormone system, whether it's your thyroid or your sex hormones. So it takes time for that loop, those feedbacks, that feedback loop to regulate and tell your body you're safe, you're good, and that is also the time frame that your body will hold on to weight. So people are saying, well, I don't get it, I'm not losing weight. Your hormones have to be regulated. Weight gain is very tightly regulated by hormones. So in order for that to happen, your hormones have to be in check, and then you will see the weight will come off.
Yeah, no, that it's so many pieces to a puzzle. It's never one
It is.
thing.
I
And
wish I
so,
could give say do this, do that, and Western medicine will very easily do that, but it will be a pill.
yeah,
So you want to get away from that.
yeah, it's a pill for an ill, is what they say.
Right.
But so something that I want to talk about too is with the carnivore diet. When you kind of get into it, there are a lot of beginner groups on Facebook, et cetera, and a lot of them are. I think there's also a dogma within the carnivore community too, where it's just like eat 2 pounds of meat a day, and like that's it. But there's a lot more nuance. And what I like about what you do is you take into account a lot of bioindividuality.
Yeah.
And so maybe we can talk about some of that, how you troubleshoot that with clients and things you think about when you're going in and working with somebody around that, instead of just saying, here's the cookie cutter approach to the carnivore diet, here's what you do, and boom, you'll lose weight, boom, your diabetes will be gone, stuff like that.
Yeah. So it really, bioindividuality is key. And it's again, this kind of the diet culture, the need for that quick fix. So I'm not surprised that with carnivore that has been brought up as far as in social media. Eat meat, everything will be good. You'll lose weight, quick weight loss, and those are the triggering words that everybody wants to hear. Like, oh, just tell me the easiest way, the quickest way. So yes, I think that by eliminating the standard American diet, those major things, you'll see some results, but it's often, people feel deflated or discouraged because it's not what they expected. So you do have to approach it individually. I spend an hour just on an initial call with clients to figure out what have they tried, what has worked, what hasn't, what are their symptoms, and in order to come up with a real strategic plan. And even then, when we're going into the nitty gritty and making changes, there's more and more data that I'm collecting. I think data is very, very important. I am a science nerd. I've done research for all throughout college and well after. And so, coming up with these experiments and really testing things is very necessary. I'll also look to genetic testing, similar to what you had talked about with the beta carotene. There are some people that, like with methylation, there's certain things that can inhibit you from feeling your absolute best on carnivore. And again, those things have to be dialed into as far as, all right, what are we lacking with nutrients? Though it is a very nutrient dense diet, you may not be absorbing certain things. So focusing in on the gut as well, by way of genetics, and then also gut testing. That's another approach that I use. Trying to think what else. It really focusing is on symptoms and what their overall goals are is the other part of it. Your goal may not be maybe weight loss only, and not that it's that and there's anything wrong with that, but that is your goal. And it's, I think, people hold on to that. They don't see the bigger picture, which is the hormones and the regulation of their gut and fixing those things first. So I am very able to shed light on those things as a medical provider, in that it's not as quick as losing weight. We could put you in a caloric deficit. You could lose weight really quickly, but it's not going to be sustainable. You're going to gain it back and you're going to feel still pretty crappy. So going about it the right way, I think, is also very important.
No, I mean, I agree with all of that. I think that's super important. Another thing that I see too in just in the base carnivore group is a lot of people still hold on to particularly like coffee, and coffee is a kind of a heated debate within the community of like, some people are like, oh no, you shouldn't have coffee at all because one, it's a plant, and then also you could have all these mold problems with it or the way it's processed and stuff like that. Where do you stand on coffee and caffeine, because caffeine's a drug and all that stuff?
Yeah, that's kind of my, yes, I think there are concerns for the gut, and especially if you're dealing with mold issues or, again, you should focus on the best quality. I recommend Purity coffee. It's lab tested, no mold. But yeah, so I think no matter what, if you are going, it shouldn't be, first and foremost, it shouldn't be dogmatic. But yeah, you're correct. There are things that are. And people make their argument based on, oh, well, it's a plant, or it's, or maybe that person's making that argument because they've dealt with mold and they suffered some symptoms related to drinking coffee. You don't know. So as far as my standpoint, I personally don't, one of my genetic things is that I don't metabolize caffeine well. And so I could drink it at 6 a.m. and I will be up all night. So
are you a slow metabolizer? Is that what it is?
Okay. Very, very slow metabolizer. So it's not worth it for me. And I personally, on carnivore, and even before carnivore on keto, my energy levels are always high. So it was never I'm drinking this for energy. So you kind of have to figure out also what your why is. Why do you want to continue to drink coffee? Is it something that it makes you boost your mood? Because I did notice when even just trying a decaf, I felt like a different mood. Like I was, that little dopamine hit almost of, oh, this isn't bad. It wasn't for energy. For some people, it's energy. Other people, it is. It's a very addictive thing. I've worked with clients who say, no, I cannot function without my coffee. For those people, it's not a matter of, well, just keep doing what you're doing. Maybe we should experiment and try and cut down, or have breaks at least where you don't feel that it's controlling you, or that you need it in order to get up. So personally, I don't drink it, but I can see why some people do. I can see why other people don't. And I like to dive into, well, what's your why? And what, as far as your health, what are your goals? If it is to prevent mold, and it is to, or to completely get away from plants because you have an autoimmune condition and this could be contributing to something with your symptoms, then that's another issue. So it really just depends on the person. I know it's a blanket answer, but it really does.
No, I mean that's unfortunately kind of there's never going to be a black and white answer for most of this stuff because everyone is bioindividual. Like, we'll have to do a whole nother podcast, but you could talk about things with coffee, or just a lot of food in general, with like histamine. Some people have histamine problems. I'm one of those people, and I'm addicted to coffee, and coffee doesn't really help you with histamine problems.
Right.
So I noticed that.
Yeah. See, and that's great. I commend you. Like, I commend people who do, they look into this stuff. Of course I'm happy to shed light on it, but seeing, oh, well, this doesn't work for me, or this does, it's so bioindividual. And like, even how I was talking about keto, cauliflower is allowed, or cheese is allowed. I'm lactose intolerant. And cauliflower makes me feel like crap. So those aren't things that'll be in my keto diet. Similar with carnivore, slow cooked roast. If you have histamine issues, you're probably not doing slow cooked roasts. Those are totally allowed, but we have to get away. If anything, this dogmatic mindset is just feeding into the diet culture. So I really urge people to get away from it. Think about what works best in you. because that is one of the first defenses that someone will say, well, that's still keto or that's still carnivore. You can eat that. No, yes, I could eat anything,
Yeah.
but it doesn't make me feel good. So,
Yeah.
and that is on an individual basis.
It's really, I think what's really, at least what I like about the community is there's so many people doing it, at least, that you can kind of see what people are doing, and you can kind of take little bits from here and little bits from here,
Yeah.
apply it to yourself, and just see how you feel. And I think it's important that everyone, that no matter what diet strategy you're trying to implement into your life, I would keep a food and mood journal all
Yeah.
the time.
I always encourage clients to, they're like, well, I'm tracking in MyFitnessPal. And it's like, no, but I want to know how it makes you feel, and what you've noticed on a mental level, emotional level, because that is just as important as, oh, I didn't have diarrhea today. It really both, they go hand in hand. I want to hear both sides.
So kind of the last thing I wanted to go out on is something we kind of talked about before we actually even started recording, but it was like this idea of and you said this in your last thing about coffee, is what is your why? What is your relationship with the food you're eating? And we could probably talk about a lot of the whys for people holding on to a standard American diet or eating sweets, emotional eating. We could talk about all those things.
Yeah.
But I think something that is important with people that watch this podcast or know any of my background or my partner's background with eating disorders, because so many people I've seen kind of turn to this animal-based way of eating, and have kind of overcome these relationship with food issues, no matter what the background is.
Yeah.
So maybe you can shed some light on that and even your own personal experience.
Yeah, so I personally was the very carb addicted kid. Like I said, grew up in an Italian family, and carbs we had pasta regularly. And I definitely, as I started to eliminate those things, it was feeling more of this, not as hangry, not as addicted, not as needy as far as wanting to eat all the time. I felt just overall like unstable as far as my mood. And I personally dealt with a lot of anxiety growing up. I had obsessive compulsive disorder, and I grew out of it to some extent as I aged, but it was very real. And I definitely saw that even in manifestations of food and disordered eating, of feeling out of control and using food to kind of curb my feelings, whether it was anxiety or just, binging on sugar to try and fill a void. So I definitely have experienced that myself. And I think with the elimination of carbohydrates and sugar, for sure, that helped. And many people, there's a lot of just this anecdotal evidence. And even there is published research on neurotransmitters in these foods, as far as, what they stimulate, this addictive property, similar to morphine. We're even seeing it in a carnivore space of cheese, still has that property for many people. So there is definitely an addictive property to food. I think by eliminating those things, you do have more a sense of control, of stability, without those sugar the spikes in your blood glucose. So this is, it's not just a mental thing.
Nope.
It's very tightly regulated to blood glucose levels as well. But the combination can be very, very hard to get out of, as far as that cycle, whether it's binging, whether it's restricting. And there's a lot of anecdotal evidence as far as what carnivore can do in that space. It would be, if you were to approach this from Western medicine, they would look at you like you're crazy, that carnivore diet, even a keto diet, is very, very restrictive. It's actually one of the most freeing things I personally have noticed. I have never felt a better relationship with food. I have never felt more, just more aware of my relationship with food, as far as what I actually, more intuitive is the word I guess I'm looking for, as far as what I feel like right now, or what is gonna, versus eating based just off of emotions. Have you noticed that?
And I'm not full carnivore, so I couldn't tell you exactly. I haven't jumped the gun there yet. I will though. I'm very excited. I'm going to try it. But I will say this, and this is just from my own personal observation and being a little more cognizant or working with my own clients that are dealing with eating disorder problems, is that you really need to take a step back kind of wherever you're at and exactly think about what emotions are triggering me to want to compulsively eat this or that. And then you don't even need a quote diagnosed eating disorder to know that you have compulsions triggered by some of, especially the sugary foods people eat. And you got to ask, even in those moments, why am I eating this Ben and Jerry's right now?
Right.
Because it's like, you don't need it. Nobody needs it. And that's something, as I've toned down, particularly carbohydrates, and increased fats and animal fats, I've just noticed that I spend less time thinking about what do I crave. And I just find myself kind of eating once or twice a day, not forcing myself to either eat a bunch or restrict anything. And you gain kind of, just like we mentioned before, a clarity that you didn't have before, when your blood sugar is going all over and your neurotransmitters are all over the place and they're sending all these mixed signals with your ghrelin and your leptin is all over. And so I think, like you said too, is it's a good way to establish a new baseline.
Definitely. I definitely see that. I mean, I would never in a million years think that you could put an entire tray, entire table, entire room filled with sweets in front of me, and I wouldn't even flinch.
I know.
I don't like to use. I'm weary on using the word control, because many times in Western medicine, that is what eating disorder is very quickly associated with, is that it's this need for control. So when you are eliminating certain foods, or you are you've been selective, as what they will call it, then that is how they perceive, well, you're controlling it. That is the difference between Western medicine and really what people are finding relief with, whether it's a ketogenic state or a carnivore approach, is that no, it's really more on a biochemical level. It's the stability of their blood sugars, and yes, it's not them like going out of their way to control it, though. Mm-hmm. It's this sense of this control and this more awareness of what their body needs, mm-hmm. than it is an outward, intentional control. Yeah. So it comes very naturally. But again, if you were to go into a hospital or to a doctor, they would immediately say, you're selective, you're restrictive, you still have an eating disorder, go eat some ice cream. And it's like,
but that's the thing, is like
so frustrating.
And this is only my experience in recovery. I've noticed is that when you do that, I turned into a binge eater, because what happened was I started reintroducing these not safe foods like ice cream and all of these things. And then your body is, it's born to naturally crave like fat, salt, and sugar especially. Like when you get it, your body's like, energy, let's get it.
Oh yeah. And the combination is deadly.
And so the control thing is like kind of that's a deeper subject for another day for sure. Yeah. But it's like you lose control so fast. It's so much easier to let your bad gut bacteria tell you need sugar than to heal that gut, and then you just don't feel that urge anymore. It's all about simplicity.
And I like to think of it in the sense of, so I think when you talk about it in the sense of food, it becomes it becomes harder to kind of like digest it, so to speak, mm-hmm. Versus if you said it was a drug, like let's say meth, or or even smoking, cocaine, like whatever it is. Yep. When you put it in those terms, then it becomes like you shed light on the addictive properties of the food and what it's causing you on a mental health perspective, and then it's like, oh yeah, no, like unfortunately, you cannot live without food. So we have to find what are the triggers, what are the boundaries for us as individuals if you are having disordered eating versus, oh, I could quit cigarettes tomorrow. I could quit cocaine tomorrow.
It's all relative.
So when you put it in that perspective, even just saying like, oh, I'm going to have a little bit of this or a little bit of alcohol, like in an alcoholic, you wouldn't offer an alcoholic alcohol,
No.
even if it was a small amount. So don't offer me sugary foods because it's a slippery slope. It's something that can, that would be my trigger. So yeah, it's this gray area, and because it's food, I think, we obviously need food to live, but people, for that reason, they don't fully understand it or think to it in the same way.
I'd like to remind people too that a lot of the things we consider food today or what is normal today has only existed for about the last 50 to 75 years or 100 years, and it's not really food. So I think that's the way to think of it too. But what I love is that you're not only, you have all this knowledge that you've gained over your own experience and from your own medical background, but you're using it to help people kind of find what really fits their individual needs based on where they're at, what their history is, what their genetics are. And so I'd love to just kind of have this end with you telling people where they can find you on Instagram, on your website. I'd love people to reach out to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. No, this is really, it's my passion. And of course it would be so much easier to just give, that blanket statement or say, just do this. And it's not that easy. But that's part of the fun and being able to go on people's journey with them, that health journey. This is a lifelong journey. It'll never be done. It really, lights me up every day. So I am on Instagram at Quality Carnivore, as well as Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I have a YouTube channel that I have established, but I have not yet started. That'll hopefully be in the works soon. And then, if you YouTube me, you can see all the podcasts that I have been on thus far, including this one, soon to be. I'm very, very excited to have been here with you today, Ryan. So thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And if anybody wants to work with me, they can also go on my website. You can book an appointment for a quick call. We can discuss whether it's, you're looking for lab recommendations, review, just to make sure that you're doing things right, or you actually want to sign up. I do custom programs as well. So whole range of services, and I can hop on a quick call and talk with anyone who's interested. www.qualitycarnivore.com.
All of those links will be down in the description. I really appreciate you coming on, Austin. We'll have you again because there's so much nitty gritty that I want to get into. Yeah. But thank you again so much.